Hi there everyone, my name is Ollie, I'm a junior doctor living and working in the north of England, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to be talking about asthma attacks or acute exacerbations of asthma as you might be presented with them in your medical school or PA school finals. But before we jump into the scenario, just a reminder that as with all of the videos in this series, if you go down to the description you'll find a link to a feedback form. If you fill that out, that'll give you access to a summary sheet for everything we're going to cover in this video, as well as an Anki deck so you can take the resources with you on the go. And as always, we just have to remember that this is for educational purposes only. This video should not inform your clinical decision making. If you have any medical or health problems, you should discuss them with your doctor. But with that understanding, let's begin. Now, most people, if you ask anyone on the street, will be familiar with the signs and symptoms typical presentation of asthma. Typically these will include things like coughing, wheezing, feeling of tightness in the chest, palpitations, tachycardia, cyanosis, confusion, sweating, even fainting and loss of consciousness. And all of these signs and symptoms come back to the three basic pathophysiologies of asthma, which are bronchoconstriction, airway inflammation, and mucus impaction. So the gist of it is that the bronchi, that is the largest airways, will constrict, close up, and that's what gives you this feeling of tightness in the chest. Most commonly this is an IgE mediated response in the same way as we talked about in the anaphylaxis video, usually mediated by an allergen such as pollen or dust. However, we have to remember with asthma that it is a spectrum of disease and isn't always allergic. It can be triggered by things like cold weather, exercise, or stress. So then not only are our airways tightening up and closing off, but they start producing large amounts of mucus. And it's this dynamic compression of the upper airways combined with large amounts of mucus production that gives rise to the polyphonic wheeze that we associate with asthma, because we've got these multiple sites of compression essentially, which is what gives you not just one note as you would expect from a single site of compression, but multiple sites, again, which can be changing dynamically with time. Now, one of the most important things to remember for your final exams is grading the severity of an exacerbation of asthma, because when you're seeking help from a senior and asking somebody to come and assist you, this will form a large part of the judgment that they can make and decide how quickly they're going to come and help you. So just to give a general kind of overview of how to think about the severity of asthma, a moderate exacerbation is someone with a peak expiratory flow rate, a PEFR, as we'll say from now on, of 50 to 75%, best predicted for them, alongside normal speech and no features of severe or life-threatening asthma. That's kind of the baseline. Moving one step along to a severe exacerbation of asthma in adults, would be a PEFR of 33 to 50%, a respiratory rate of 25 breaths per minute or more, inability to complete their sentences in one breath. You might see some use of accessory muscles and tripoding, with oxygen saturations of at least 92%, so they're still above the point on the dissociation curve where they're going to drop off rapidly. And then finally, a life-threatening asthma attack, the one where you really need to be all alarm bells ringing, is firstly a PEFR of 33% or less of their best predicted, saturations of less than 92%, altered consciousness, signs of exhaustion, any cardiac arrhythmia, obvious cyanosis, poor respiratory effort, a silent chest, which is an absolute red flag feature, or any new onset confusion. And it's somewhat paradoxical to think about, but someone flapping around, panicking, making an awful lot of effort is actually less worrying in this circumstance than someone who is sat motionless, not making much noise at all. Because that first person, even though they're flapping around, that means they have energy reserves and they're fully conscious. If someone is quiet, unmoving, and has that silent chest, that means they've run out of energy. Something is basically going catastrophically wrong and they're in really serious danger. But let's have a work through a clinical scenario together. You are the physician associate covering the vascular ward. One of the patients in a bed by the window begins coughing and spluttering, and you are promptly asked by one of the healthcare assistants to come and review the patient. Mrs. Ahmed, a 45-year-old lady, was admitted 2 days ago and is awaiting a CT angiogram for chronic leg ischemia. She's a known asthmatic and has a blue salbutamol inhaler by her bedside. So you'll promptly go and see the patient and use your A to E approach. On assessment of the airway, Mrs. Ahmed is gasping for breath and cannot complete her sentences in one breath. When looking at her breathing, she has saturations of 88% on air, a respiratory rate of 26, good inspiratory effort at the moment, symmetrical chest movements, a polyphonic wheeze is evident bilaterally, her percussion note is normal throughout, Her trachea seems to be central, and her JVP is raised to 4 centimeters. You move on to assess her circulation. Her heart rate is 120 beats per minute and regular. She has a blood pressure of 140/95. Her capillary refill time is less than 2 seconds, and she is warm throughout. Moving on to D for disability, pupils are equal and responsive to light. She's AVPU-A GCS 15, and her most recent blood glucose was 11.5 millimoles per litre. And then finally E, there is nothing remarkable on full exposure while you maintain her dignity. Her nose is visibly running and her eyes are watery and reddened. So this combination of features suggests that our patient is experiencing an acute exacerbation of her asthma. Now the obvious question to think about here is how can we separate this from anaphylaxis, because both asthma and anaphylaxis involve airway obstruction and often similar signs and symptoms. Well, anaphylaxis is usually triggered by an exposure to something new, like a food or a medication, whereas asthma tends to be a more chronic condition with a constant low level of inflammation. And additionally, there's some prompting in this scenario because we've said that the patient is near the window, and additionally they have a runny nose and watery eyes, which suggests that they're being exposed to an irritant like dust or pollen. However, we do obviously need to be really vigilant for anaphylaxis, so do stay aware and do your full A to E properly. Now thankfully the treatment algorithm for an acute exacerbation of asthma is very simple, and it's linked directly to the underlying pathophysiology. First and foremost, any hypoxic person needs some oxygen. That's very easy to address. Depending on the amount that they need to maintain saturations of between 94 and 98%, you might consider a simple face mask, a Venturi mask, or even simple nasal cannulae, depends what they need. Now if they're well enough, before the mask goes on, you can consider doing a quick peak flow so that we can assess the severity of the exacerbation for future management. Obviously if they're super unwell flapping around, move on. Because now we need to open up the airways and think about giving some medication. We obviously discussed earlier on the pathophysiology of asthma, and the way that we're going to counteract those processes is with nebulized salbutamol. That's a dose of 5 milligrams with a flow rate of at least 6 litres per minute. And this can either be continuous or intermittent depending on the equipment that your hospital has. Alternatively, if you don't have a nebulizer immediately available, and we know that this patient has got her inhaler with her, you can use the patient's own inhalers, ideally with a spacer if you have one. For an adult with a blue salbutamol inhaler, that's going to be 4 puffs with a further 2 puffs every 2 minutes, up to 10 puffs. Now moving on, if there's insufficient response to salbutamol or the exacerbation is severe or life-threatening, the next medication to consider is nebulized ipratropium bromide. And you'll remember that ipratropium bromide is an anticholinergic medication. So what it does is it selectively blocks the muscarinic acetylcholine receptors on the smooth muscle and simply stops it contracting. And then in this second stage, the other thing you can consider is a steroid. Again, depending on what you have on hand, you could consider 40 milligrams of oral prednisolone. If they can't swallow, you've got some other options, which might be IV hydrocortisone 100 milligrams, or intramuscular prednisolone, which is 160 milligrams. If you've done all these and there's still no decent response, this is the time when you really need to be getting your seniors involved, so your registrar, and get ITU involved and make them aware early. Because the other medications that you consider really, I think, warrant some senior oversight, and these are things like aminophylline, theophylline, and magnesium sulfate. But again, we're getting into the realms of more specialist medication. And that's actually more or less it for management of an acute exacerbation of asthma, because anything more severe than that and they're gonna go to ITU. But let's just take a minute to think about some additional elements that may appear in scenarios and you might be challenged with in a more challenging viva or a clinical case. As obviously we've said before, the most concerning issue here is airway compromise, and that's something that's going to kill someone really quite rapidly. Not just because of immediate hypoxia, but because of the risk of cardiac arrest and respiratory arrest. This means have a very low threshold for getting seniors involved as soon as things look a bit ropey, because ultimately these patients may need to be intubated, and it's a lot easier for them and your seniors to intubate someone and keep them alive rather than try and bring someone back after they've died. Secondly, follow-up and aftercare are really important, because if this sequence of events happens, especially in a hospital, this suggests that their asthma is not well controlled. Every person who has an exacerbation of their asthma should be followed up within 48 hours of the incident, which should include a thorough and detailed review of the event and the events that led to the event, checking and measuring their peak flow at that time, and ensuring that they have good inhaler technique. Even in my brief stint working as a doctor, I've met so many patients who do not know how to use their inhalers properly, and that's very much our problem, not their problem. We need to make sure that instructions are clear and they know how to use them appropriately. And thirdly, we should also review their medications, considering what their steroid dose is like and whether the dose is high enough or needs to be increased, and discussing trigger factors and how we can protect them from being exposed to those factors. You may actually wish to prescribe a short course of oral steroids for them to take home that they can just have on hand and take if they have warning signs of future exacerbations. And lastly, two final points to discuss. Every single patient with a diagnosis of asthma, especially one who has an exacerbation like this, needs to have a personalised asthma action plan. And finally, if they've had 2 or more episodes within the last 12 months, then consider referring them to a respiratory specialist for further review and finer control. That's it guys, thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to go ahead and subscribe to the channel and like this video if you found it useful. And as I said in the description below, you'll find a link to a feedback form so you can let me know how useful or not the video was. If you fill that out, you'll get access to an Anki deck and a summary sheet which you can use to revise for finals. The full series of videos is available on YouTube and on my website at ollieburton.com, and I'd really appreciate you going and checking that out. Thanks very much guys, and I'll see you next time.